Welcome to the Divorce Do's and Don't Show. This is the show that covers all phases and aspects of divorce so you can avoid common, costly mistakes and have a smarter, saner, savvier divorce. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce our host, Lisa Decker. She is a certified divorce financial analyst, a real estate collaboration specialist in divorce, and the CEO and founder of Divorce Money Matters and Divorce Town USA. Lisa, what can our viewers look forward to today?
Thank you, Marcella, for that introduction. And today I am happy to have back a wonderful guest who's been with us before, and always a pleasure to have Kathleen Shack. Kathleen, I know you have so many credentials and so many things that you do. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into this work, and how you work with divorcing couples or individuals and families. I just want to give folks a little bit of the background because you do so many things. I know you're a mediator, a parenting coordinator, a therapist. I'm not even sure all the rest of your titles here, but I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to share that with folks before we get into the meat of this really juicy topic.
Well, thank you for having me. And I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I've been seeing families for 22 years now. So this is a love that I have, helping families, whether it's helping families rescue their relationships and build a healthier relationship, or helping families get through divorce and get through post-divorce and that transition, and figuring out how to be blended families or a new kind of family. And some of the credentials that I have are that I'm a certified discernment counselor. So I help work with families and couples to figure out if they are going to work on their relationship, or if it looks like divorce or separation might be the best avenue for them at the stage that they're in. And I also I'm a certified Gottman couples therapist. So that's where I help couples work on their relationship and sometimes build marriage 2.0 and make things healthier than they were previously. And the co-parenting counseling that I do helps me in terms of getting couples and families to healthy places with their divorce and with their children, and to stay focused on the children's needs instead of their own.
Very important. Very important. Well, I know that you and I go a long way back, and you've been doing great work with clients for many, many years. And I am so grateful that you are here today sharing with our audience about a very important topic. And that is, can you still be friendly with your ex after divorce? So why don't you share some thoughts about that with us? What is your experience on that?
Yeah, so I wanted to have an opportunity to encourage people to stay connected with their in-laws. And so this is not just your ex's parents, but also any other people that are part of your ex's family. So this might be a favorite sister-in-law that you had, or a favorite brother-in-law. It could be cousins or aunts or uncles. So I wanted to remind people that you are divorcing your ex, but you're not necessarily divorcing their family, that you can have a relationship ongoing with different members of the family. And it just takes a little bit of intentionality and mindfulness to make that happen.
That's super important, because not everybody's going to react the same way. Everybody has their own individual feelings and biases, but if there's someone that you were close with, then hopefully that relationship can continue. And it's vitally important if there are children involved, because these are still cousins, right? So you don't want to cut off your kids from their half of their family. I will tell you just quickly, I share a story with the audience. I am a grandchild of divorce. I've never been divorced, but I am a grandchild of divorce. And that divorce so severed my family that I never knew half of my family for most of my life. It's only in the last few years. I'm not going to say how old I am, but it's been a long time, a lifetime of not knowing family. And what a shame. And that's why I love the work that we're doing here, because we want to help preserve families. We want to help other families avoid losing connection, because those ties are so important, especially for the youngest among us. So
I had a question for you, Kathleen.
Sure.
you had mentioned that you encourage that type of relationship. So is there anything specific that you can suggest or that would help people to kind of facilitate that relationship? I'm assuming that in the beginning, it's probably quite awkward. So what kind of tips and suggestions can you give our audience for how to kind of get that started while they're distancing themselves from their ex, how they might be able to keep that relationship?
Yeah, in the beginning, it can be awkward. And so it's really important to be realistic. So you need to be realistic in terms of your expectations of yourself and of your ex's family. So there might be all kinds of information going around that might be accurate, might be inaccurate about why the divorce is happening. There could be assumptions that are being made. So you don't know where everybody's minds are, where everybody's emotions are. So be realistic and be patient with the healing process. And what I always encourage people to do is remember that times you got together with people in your ex's family weren't always focused on having to talk about relationships or having to focus on what is not going well. So you want to remember, do extracurricular activities with these people, find hobbies that you guys have in common, maybe hobbies you've always done with these people, and continue to do those. Find something else that you guys can focus on in the beginning. So it's not awkward silence and it's not everybody wondering what they need to talk about and trying to avoid certain topics. So if it's going to the kids' soccer games, invite everybody to the kids' soccer games, and then you guys can be talking about that, or enjoying a favorite football team. Everybody have a Super Bowl party and pay attention to the game instead of having to focus on each other, things like that.
Great tips. Great.
And people always love talking about themselves. So if you I encourage people, talk about their family, talk about their children, talk about their jobs. You want to have it as if you guys were eating lunch together like you would have 2 years ago. You would focus on different topics, focus on a wide range of things.
And I'm assuming that as you're building this or rebuilding this in some cases, relationship, that it's not a free-for-all. So what suggestions do you have as far as boundaries? What are some realistic boundaries that people might want to put in place?
It's really important to make sure you're not talking about your ex with your ex's family. So that's a big boundary to have in place, because you don't want to cause any mixed feelings about your ex, and you also don't want your ex's family to think that you're searching for information or trying to convince them of certain things. So make sure you don't talk about your ex with their family. And also with boundaries, it's important to let the exes know where the line is in terms of when they get to see the kids, or when you're available to hang out, or how often maybe you want to be getting in touch with them. So with your in-laws, you can always set, some nice gentle boundaries that show them that you want to be still involved with them. You want them to be involved in your children's lives. And you also want to have some boundaries where they're not constantly in your life at this point, and they're probably going to want some space from you as well. So they're going to be setting their own boundaries that you need to be respectful of.
That's good stuff, Kathleen. And what kinds of issues have you seen come up that people can avoid? What are some tips that you have to keep things as friendly as possible?
I think the biggest mistakes I see include when people forget about their boundaries and they forget that they should not share information about their divorce process or about their ex with their ex's family. People sometimes get into gossip mode, or they're so used to being able to just be open and talk with different family members. Say, like, if it was you and your sister-in-law, you might be used to talking about the family or talking about different things that are happening. And you have to set that boundary there. And remember, there's certain things that are off topic that shouldn't be talked about anymore. And that's usually what gets people in trouble, because people start to get defensive and they start to take sides. So I think another error that people make is keeping the children from the rest of their family, like you were talking about with your grandparents' family, that you didn't know a whole half of your family for a large part of your life. And we want to avoid having that happen. So the kids want to be involved with both sides of their family. They want to know their extended family, hang out with cousins like they used to do. So you want to make sure that you don't keep the kids from the rest of the family just because you and your ex weren't able to stay together.
And I know we've
had it-
passed the holidays, but I remember us talking and several of our guests about how difficult it can be to be left out of traditions,
Mhm.
whether it's holidays or birthday parties or things like that. Any tips for folks who are listening or watching in now?
I encourage people to invite the ex family to events. So it is probably going to take time in the beginning for people to feel comfortable all being together in the same room. And some family members might feel comfortable and some might not. So be happy with whoever ends up showing up at the event, but have an open door policy in terms of inviting family members to particularly kids events and to kids birthdays, things that would be important to the children that they see the rest of their family there.
Mhm.
And then things like holidays of Thanksgiving and Christmas or Hanukkah and various other holidays. I think it's play it by ear, see who's comfortable with what, see who's comfortable with the boundaries. And again, be happy with whoever feels comfortable enough to be there. But also, if you're the person getting divorced, keep in mind that sometimes blood is thicker than water, and people may not invite you to birthday parties anymore, or they may not invite you to the holidays. And that's part of now being in a divorced family. So you have to adjust to that and find a level of acceptance there.
And how does someone find that level of acceptance? I mean, any tips on that? That's got to be pretty hard when you're extending and you're not receiving
Mhm.
back.
Well, I think therapy usually helps. I'm a little biased towards therapy, but I think it is helpful to be able to work through those emotions and work through all the things that come along with the transition into a divorced family, and taking the time to maybe speak with some of the family members that you do still feel close with to get an idea of maybe why a boundary has been put there, or talk with them maybe in the future to see if they get more comfortable having you still involved with the family. But just being able to talk through the emotions and be able to find new traditions and find ways that you want your holidays to be going forward, because they likely are not going to include all the people that you used to be involved with on the holidays.
There's a lot of shift that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen from experience that even if it's that way in the beginning, that doesn't mean things can't change somewhere down the road. And some will and some won't. So, being open to whatever happens within your family unit and what the future holds. I think just being able to adapt is the best thing here,
Mm-hmm.
from my experience. So, and I definitely agree with you, get a good therapist. Kathleen, this is a good time to tell everyone your information. How can they contact you?
Yeah, you can reach me on my website. My website is FamilySolutionsCounselingGA.com. And my phone number is 678-220-0090. I am located in Alpharetta, Georgia, so people can come into my office for counseling sessions, or we can do telehealth sessions. I do any sessions either online or in the office. So there's a wide range of ways that people can have access to me, and I can try to help their family. I think one thing I just thought of is you also don't want to put too much pressure on yourself in terms of trying to maintain a relationship with in-laws. So you want to remember that while you might want to be closer with them as time goes forward, again, they may not want to be that close. They might want boundaries, but you need to be able to at least be courteous and be able to be friendly And remember, you don't have to be friends with everybody. Everybody is not necessarily going to want to be your friend going forward. And there might be people in your ex's family that you never were that close with anyway, but you want to just make sure, particularly if you have kids, that you're being friendly, you're being courteous, you're being kind. Don't put that pressure on yourself to think you have to make sure you guys are friends. Just make sure you're being friendly going forward.
That's a big distinction. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes, because you can still be respectful and courteous and friendly, but you don't necessarily have to be friends.
Mhm.
You get to choose that, right? You get to
Right.
choose how you react. And I also want to point out before I forget that Kathleen can be found at divorcetownusa.com, which is the sponsor of this show. And you can find her there if you did not get all that information. But we want to make sure you can find Kathleen. And Kathleen, do you serve clients across the country, or is it specific to Georgia only?
I am licensed in Georgia, so I just see Georgia clients, but I can help people find other therapists in their area if they're looking for somebody with certain credentials and experience.
Oh, that's great. You're a wonderful resource in so many ways. So many ways. We love that.
I had a quick question, going back a little bit to when you start being friendly with the
Mhm.
with the in-laws. I come from a family law background. Most of you know I was a paralegal for years. And while there are some collaborative, cooperative divorces, sometimes there are not.
Yeah.
So, word of caution, if there are legal proceedings in play, it may be best to keep some distance maybe during that time, just for your own for your own legal protection. That may be something the attorney recommends, but there may still be a balance. But I appreciated what you said about not discussing anything related to the divorce with your ex's family. It's not fair to them, and it could be used against you at some point as well if it's not a particularly amicable process that you're going through.
Right. And a good rule of thumb to think about is assume that whatever you're sharing with your ex's family is going to get shared with your ex. So, particularly in terms of the divorce process or any kind of plans that you have, you don't want to be sharing that with your ex's family. People sometimes forget that. And again, they sort of get into gossip mode or get into venting mode and forget that their ex is likely going to hear a lot of what they had to say.
Well, think about it. My family, my brother and I married a brother and a sister.
Okay.
So if anything happens in our families, that's especially important for us because our kids are doubly related and our family is family all the way through. So no matter, and that happens a lot. Actually, my two nieces married two brothers. So two sisters married two brothers. We're just continuing the trend in our family. But those are things that do have to be taken into consideration, especially if one couple doesn't make it or doesn't work out. This is still a family, in this case, even by blood. So finding a balance between what is shared and what is not shared, and knowing that it all ends up in the mix somewhere can help us to all behave ourselves when we are when we are with our family and ex-family.
Right. Another thing to think about is social media. So when you're thinking about who you're friends with on social media, you have to also be careful about who you want to choose to remain friends with and have attached to your accounts and who you might not, because as you start to share pictures and things about your new life and moving forward and maybe starting to date people, that might not be information that you necessarily want your ex-mother-in-law to be able to see that that's what you're doing, because again, information will get back to your ex. So if you've blocked your ex from your social media, you might want to also remember what other family members of that person or best friends of that person do you still have attached to your social media accounts, and you might want to do some cleanup there. Also, social media can be a great way though for the grandparents and the cousins to all stay connected. So it's a good way for you to be able to share some pictures and maybe updates for your ex in-laws without having to necessarily text them directly or talk with them directly. Maybe they can see pictures of the grandkids through your social media account.
And if you don't want them attached to your account, like you said, but for privacy, you could always set up a group and invite them to the group, and that's where you share photos and things. So
Mhm.
that's good stuff, because we got to figure out ways to get around some of these hurdles that we have, and yet you
Yeah.
don't want to fan the flames with your ex-family. And you don't really need them meddling in your business as you go forward. So finding ways to set boundaries and yet keep the ties as close as possible, especially when there are children involved, is so important. And we have those resources in today's world, so take advantage of them. Just use them wisely and with caution.
Mhm. Yeah.
I love the idea of the group, because like, for example, in our family, we all use WhatsApp because we're all over the world. So we are all connected through WhatsApp. I've got a brother in Turkey, a brother in Bolivia. And that does allow us, anything that's shared there, everybody's going to see it.
Mhm.
So, obviously every family ends up with an ex here or there along the way. That person can either be removed from the group, or in some cases can be kept in the group, and just the conversation stays neutral in that forum. Who's doing what, or who's got this new event coming up, or especially for things like weddings and funerals and things where you do have this extended family, or in our case, in Lisa's case, where there are cousins on the ex's side now. That connection is so important, and nobody wants to feel left out of a major event, especially for our kids' sake. If they miss a cousin's, soccer game, or if they miss, an aunt's wedding, or heaven forbid, a loved one's funeral, because two exes couldn't work it out, or the families couldn't somehow get through that. It could have just such long lasting effects on children, especially, but even on us too, especially if it was somebody we were close to.
Mhm. Right.
I also want to share a story about making sure that, if you share a family Google Calendar, it's really important to make sure that you have disconnected certain folks from that. I had a situation with someone who reached out to me many years ago for a divorce discovery session. As a financial planner, we have an initial consult, and this gentleman, we sent him a Google invite. We don't do that anymore because it went right to his family calendar, and everyone in the family saw that he was having a divorce consult. And, that was a big shock and surprise. So we used that as a teaching moment. And I talked with him about, letting this be a discussion opener about what may be coming. But certainly you don't want folks to be seeing all the things going on in your life if they shouldn't anymore. So as you start to untangle all of the matters of your life, don't forget things like your shared calendars as well.
Mhm. Right. And thinking in terms of scheduling also, I think it's important when trying to keep in touch with the ex family that you're pretty flexible in terms of when maybe they could get together with the kids. So you might have a set schedule with your ex of when that person gets to have their parenting time, but you want to be flexible and courteous and give some grace when there's different events happening within the family, like you were just saying, with ex people's birthdays or events like weddings, things like that. You want to try to make the kids available. You want to show the family these are still important milestones in the family, and they're important to my children. So I'm going to make sure my children are able to get there, even if I'm not invited. And even if I don't want to go, I'll make sure that the kids somehow are able to be available and get there.
Those are great points. How do you feel about it if the children are very, very young, and, you're not sure, like a wedding, who would be watching over them? Any thoughts on that? That's just what came to mind for something like that. If you're not comfortable that, really someone's going to be keeping a good eye on them.
I think if they're itty bitties and you need to make sure that somebody you're comfortable with is going to be watching them, then you would try to be in touch with the family and find out maybe what their game plan is. you start to get into situations where, we're talking about families that are able to get along with each other and are able to trust each other. And in those kinds of situations, you would not feel uncomfortable sending the kids and knowing they were going to be okay. But if you have a family situation with your ex family where maybe you don't trust the extended family, maybe you don't trust your ex to be able to watch them at a wedding or to stay sober to watch the kids at a wedding reception, then that's a situation where you might not have the children go, especially if they're, age 8 and under or something, where they're not really going to grasp what's going on anyway. So you have to gauge the situation in terms of, are these people trustworthy? And are my kids going to be taken care of and be okay? And is it something that the kids should be involved in anyways?
Right, because we're talking about being friendly here, but we also want to make sure that, we're looking at every situation through the lens of, is this a proper place for them to be? Is there proper supervision and guidance? And we don't want children seeing things or experiencing things that they shouldn't be. And
Right.
so, there's the boundaries, there's common sense that goes in all of this, but still being able to let your children get to know their family as they grow older, not withholding that, but always making sure that there's someone that you trust there so that their best interests are kept at heart and they're being safe in the situation.
Right.
I appreciate that. My takeaways today have been balance, friendly, and courteous. And I think with those 3 attributes, most families would be able to work through most of these things and still keep everybody, because everybody still is a family. It's just that the marriage ended, but the
Right.
family's still the family. So I really appreciate those words you shared with us today, Kathleen. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Kathleen. That was wonderful.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So Marcella, you going to wrap us up here with some information?
Sure, absolutely. Let me just share some information on my screen so everyone can see a couple of resources that we have available for you. We do show these every week because we want to make sure if you haven't gotten your hands on them yet, that you do get your hands on them. So this is the Divorcetown Roadmap. It is available at Divorcetown USA. It is a free ebook download that explains all of these different parts of Divorcetown and helps you decide what might be the best route for you. This is a free financial fitness kit offered by Lisa Decker herself on her other website, Divorce Money Matters. This is an invaluable tool. It also includes a short ebook, but also a working Excel spreadsheet, so you can start getting the documents together, and also questions to ask an attorney. So if and when you do meet with one, hopefully at some point when, that you'll know what to ask them and why you're asking those questions so that it's a more valuable appointment. Also available at Divorcetown USA, we are sponsoring a support group, which is meeting once or twice a month. And that is available through meetup.com is where you can join the support group, and you can also RSVP to any of the upcoming meetings. The next 2 are February 10th and the day after Valentine's Day, February 15th. So we hope to see you at one of those.
And those
Just
are
a quick
nationwide. You can join from anywhere in the country.
Exactly, they are virtual. Just a quick sneak peek at next week. Divorce, recovery, and rebuilding is our theme for the month of February. We started today with repairing your relationship with your in-laws. Next week, we're going to talk about repairing your relationship with yourself and how you can be your own Valentine, no matter what your Facebook relationship status is. And joining us will be Dr. Deborah Wilder for that. So, as always, we hope that you have enjoyed this week's episode of the Divorce Do's and Don'ts show. As always, both here in America and all over the world, we're trying to help families divorce better. And we're doing it one family at a time, one show at a time, one guest at a time. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next week, same time, same place.
Thank you.